Hello, 8Es, receiving teachers and students.
Hello, Miss.
Thank you. You may sit down. Okay. Receiving students and 8Es. Now on the board, I have fractions here on the board. Now these fractions, right, will have to be rearranged from the least to the greatest, right, receiving students. So what you're going to do now is I'm going to ask a student to come up to the board and rearrange these fractions starting from the least to the greatest. Okay, receiving students, I'd like you to go up to the board and you write these fractions, okay, starting from the least to the greatest. Now what you can do is you can look at your fraction wall. You can look at the fraction wall, and will help you to compare which fraction is bigger and which fraction is smaller. So maybe in your groups, firstly you can discuss by looking at the fraction wall, and then you try to figure out which fraction is smaller, which fraction is bigger, which fraction comes first, in order from the smallest to the biggest. So receiving students, I'd like you also to do that. Look at your fraction wall, and then you go up to the board, write down the fraction from the greatest, starting from the smallest to the biggest. All right, can you do that now, please? Rearrange them in order, please. Look at your fraction wall. Okay, maybe we'll have someone to go and put the first fraction, starting from, get the smallest one first. Now you can rearrange them. Maybe you can start here, all right? Starting from the smallest fraction. Who would like to come up to the board and place the smallest first, or the least fraction? Receiving students? Okay, good. Or you watch and see if she's correct. Okay. Okay, thank you. Sit down, okay. Receiving students, 8Es, I'd like you to check and see if these fractions have been arranged in order, starting from the least to the greatest. Do you think there's anything wrong here? Yes. Okay, those of you who say yes, then you come to the board and place them in order. Okay, good. All right, he's changed them around again. So what do you think? Do you think he's correct? All right, let's see. Okay, let's check. All right, like I said, you look at your fraction wall and you compare starting from the smallest, right? Starting from the smallest to the greatest, receiving students. All right, 3/4. Let's see, is 3/4 the smallest? 3/4 meaning this is 1, 2, 3. So is this the smallest? No. So which fraction should be the starting from the least, which fraction? A half. We have 3/4, 2/5, 2/2, which is 1/2, 1/6, 1/3, and a half. Which fraction comes first? Starts here from the least, the smallest. 1/2. Is this the smallest fraction? Compare with this. 1/6. Yes? 1/6. This is smaller, right? This is the smallest fraction. So 1/6 should come first. Because I said we rearrange in order from least to the greatest. So after 1/6, what do we have? 2/5? Yes? Okay, let's see. 2/5. After 1/6, we have 2/5. Okay, what about 1/3? 1/3 smaller or 2/5 or 2/5? 1/3 is smaller than 2/5. So 1/3 should come second. Yes? Okay, 1/3. All right? 1/3 should come after 1/6. Because you see, you are looking at your fraction wall. You are comparing. See? 1/6 comes first, and then we have 1/3. After 1/3, 2/5. Yes? After 1/3, receiving students, 2/5. So you have 1, 2. 2/5 is bigger than 1/3. So 2/5 come after 1/3. Now, what do you have? After 2/5? 3/4 or half? Yes? A half. We have 1, 2, 3. 3/4. Which is bigger, 3/4 or a half? 3/4. 3/4 is bigger than a half. A half comes first, a half, and then 3/4, okay, because a half is smaller than 3/4. Then after 3/4, what comes last? 2/2 is the same as 1/2. So from the fractions are now arranged in order from least to biggest, least to the greatest. All right, receiving students? So you're comparing these fractions, which is bigger and which is smaller, by looking at your fraction wall. All right? Right. Okay, that brings us to our, moving on to our topic for today's lesson. We will be adding and subtracting fractions. All right, receiving teachers and receiving students. Our lesson topic for today is on adding and subtracting fractions. All right, we're going to do one example. Okay. Using our strips of papers, a half plus 1/3. Okay. Right. All right, receiving students, please take out a half and 1/3. Model students, get your strips of papers, get out a half and 1/3. And I'd like you to just shade in, all right? Shade in a half and a third. Do something like this. Okay, receiving students and ATs, please. Have one of your group members to do that. Shade in a half and shade in 1/3. Okay, because remember I told you that this strip is not a half, okay? This strip it's in 2 halves, so it's called a halves. If you shade in the 2, you have halves, okay? This strip is in thirds, 1, 2, 3. So if you shade in the 3, you have thirds. But here I've shaded 1/3 and a half. So can you do that, please? Sorry. Have you shaded in your fraction strips? Okay. So this is a half, and this is 1/3. All right, so a half plus a third, right? Receiving students, and 8 is. All right, how can I add a half plus a third? Receiving students, and 8 is. Okay, how can I add a half plus a third? Now, knowing that you see the denominators, are they the same? No, they're not the same. They are different. So how can I add a half plus a third with different denominators?
You have to find the lowest common denominator.
You others agree with her? Receiving students? Right, she said you have to find the lowest common denominator of which numbers? Receiving students? All right, you have to find the lowest common denominator of 2 and 3. The lowest common denominator, the lowest common multiple of 2 and 3. Okay, good. So what is the lowest common denominator of 2 and 3? One from this side.
6.
All right, good. 6. Okay, you others agree with him? 6. So that means if the lowest common denominator is 6, a half will have to be equivalent to how many 6? Or how many 6 will a half be equivalent to? And how many 6 will a third be equivalent to? Okay, receiving students, 8 is, let's look here. A half is equivalent to how many 6? Oops. Okay, can somebody come up to the board and maybe shade in, please? Receiving students, you can also go up to the board and write down your fraction, your equivalent fraction up on the board to a half, right? Come. Okay. Sorry, this, okay, good. Okay, next one. Yeah, you can do the next. Okay, thank you. Is she correct with this? A half is equivalent to how many 6? 3 6. 1, 2, 3. See? It's equal. A half is equal to 3 6. Okay, let's look at the next one. 1/3 is equivalent to how many 6? Here, our friend shaded in 3 6. Is it equal? No. So what should it be? 2 6. Yes, 2 6. All right. So this one, this part here shouldn't be shaded in. Okay, we should only have this part. 2 6 is equal to 1/3. So if I add, now I can add, right? I can add this part and this part here. So how many 6 will I have altogether? 1, 2, 3 plus 2, which is equal to 5 what? Receiving students? 5 6. So you see, firstly we had to make equivalent this fraction, a half into a half equal to 3 6. and 1/3 equal to 2/6. So now I can add 3/6 plus 2/6, which gives us 5/6. So a half plus a third is equal to, receiving students? 5/6. Okay? All right, so 80s, do you understand what we just went through here? Yes? Using these strips of papers. All right, good. Receiving students, receiving teachers, you can either use strips of papers or you can use diagrams. You can draw diagrams to illustrate addition and subtraction of fractions. Okay, let's do another example on subtraction of fractions. Okay, so a half plus a third we said was equal to 5/6. Okay, what fraction is this, receiving students? 8 is? Okay, this is 1/3. Okay. Oops. And this is 2/5. All right. Okay. So let's say 1/3 take away 2/5. Or let's put it this way. Okay. Oops. Okay, 2/5 take away 1/3. All right. First thing, what do I do, receiving students and 80s? What's the first step that I do? All right, 2/5 take away 1/3. Again, the denominators, they are not the same. They are different. So what do we do?
Find the lowest common denominator.
All right, find the lowest common denominator of which two numbers?
5 and 3.
Of 5 and 3. Okay, good. And the lowest common denominator is, let's have one from this side. Yes?
15.
Okay, good. The lowest common denominator of 5 and 3 is 15. So, I will have to make 2/5 equivalent to 15 parts, all right? Or let's say, how many 15ths will be equal to 2/5? Okay, same with 1/3. How many 15ths will be equal to 1/3? Right, who can tell me how many 15ths will be equivalent to 2/5? 80s and receiving students? Because you said the lowest common denominator of 5 and 3 is 15. So, how many 15ths will be equivalent to 2/5? 3 15ths? You others agree? Are you sure? Three 15ths. Okay, our friend said 3 15ths will be equivalent to 2/5. Come on, class. Come on. Okay, good.
Two 15ths.
2 15ths?
Yes.
Okay, good. Sit down. 2 15ths. Okay, our 2 15ths. You others agree? 2 15ths, is it equal to 2/5? Okay,
6/15.
6 15ths. You others agree? 6 15ths is equivalent to 2/5. Okay, let's say if we place our paper strip, okay? Okay, this strip, all right, has been divided into 15 parts, receiving students and 8 is, okay? This strip of paper has been divided into 15 parts. And the question was how many 15ths is equivalent to 2/5? So if I count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6/15 is equal to 2/5, all right? That's when you're using your strip of paper, okay, to compare, right? That 6/15 is equivalent to 2/5, all right? When you're using, let's say if you're using the formula, right, if you want to find out how, let's say 2/5, okay, how many 15s, sorry, how many 15s? Multiply by 3, multiply this by 3, 5 times 3 is, because 5 times that number will give you 15. So you have to multiply the same number with the numerator. So 2 times 3 is 6. 6/15, yes? Or you can, the other way around, you can simplify. Divide into 3, yeah? 6, divide by 3. 6 divided by 3, 15 divided by 3, 6 divided by 3 is 2. 15 divided by 3 is? 15 divided by 3 is? 5. So 2/5. So 6/15 is equal to 2/5. All right, what about 1/3? How many 15s is equal to 1/3? 80s and receiving students? How many 15s is equivalent to 1/3? Come on, we should have some answers now. Thank you.
5/15.
5/15. You others agree? Yes? All right, let's see if he's correct. Place your strip next to 1/3 and let's see. Is this 1, 2, 3, how many parts? Sorry, how many 15s? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5/15 is equivalent to 1/3. Okay, now, so we now have the same parts, divided into 15 parts. How many 15s is this again? 6/15. Take away, how many 15s here? 5/15. Right? So what's our answer? Receiving students? 6 take away 5 is 1. So our answer is 1/15. Or in other words, if you look at your strip here, all right, your equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 take away 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You are left with 1/15. Okay, receiving students? You put this in line here, you are left with 1/15. All right, 80s and receiving students. All right, for our activity, receiving students and 80s, okay, I only have 2 short activities for you to do, all right? Receiving students and 80s, all right, take out your books, your exercise books, your paper strips too, if you will also need your paper strips. Okay, receiving students, the first exercise for you to do with adding fractions, says use your strips of paper to add the fraction and apply the rule. Okay, firstly, 1/4 plus 1/2. All right, 1/4 plus 1/2. We used our strips of papers, okay, to add and subtract the fractions. Okay, when you're using your formula, you can also follow this. When you use your formula, you also follow this, the rule. For example, 1/2 plus 1/3. 1/2 plus 1/3. Using the formula or the rule, the lowest common denominator, which is 6. Okay, so 1/2 becomes 3/6, and 1/3 becomes 2/6. And then what do? We found the lowest common denominator, which is 6. So we add. Now we can add fractions with the same what? Same denominator. So 3 plus 2, which is 5 over 6, 5, 6. Yes, 80s and receiving students. Okay, the same rule also applies when subtracting. 2/5 take away 1/3. You also get the lowest common denominator, which is 15. Okay, equivalent fractions of 2/5, which is 6 over 15. The equivalent fraction for 1/3 is it, which is 5 over 15. So the lowest common denominator, which is 15, 6 take away 5 is 1 over 15. So that's when you're using the rule, the lowest common denominator rule, okay? Any questions, 80s and receiving students? So like I said, you can either use paper strips or diagrams to add and subtract fractions, or you can also use the formula, the rule. Apply the rule when you're adding and subtracting fractions. Okay, I'd like you to do this first one quickly, please. 1/4 plus 1/2. All right, 1/4 plus 1/2, receiving students and 80s. I'd like you, please, if you can use your paper strip or you can draw up a diagram, right, to do, to add 1/4 plus 1/2. Can we do that in our groups, please, 80s and receiving students? You can follow the example, the first example. You can use this, okay, follow the first example, all right, using your paper strips, or you can draw up a diagram, okay, 80s and receiving students. So can I have you to work, can you please work in your groups, please, so that you can work faster? In your groups, I'd like you to do the first activity, exercise number 1, 1/4 plus 1/2, okay, receiving students and 80s. Can we do that now? Right. Okay. 1/4 plus 1/2. Okay, we are working very quietly. Like I said, in your groups, please, can we do the first one, number 1? Okay. All right, good. Okay. And then when you're using your, if you're using your paper strips, you can use a pencil to divide the parts, okay? First thing, what do? You find you have to find the lowest common denominator, okay? And then you divide into that how many equal parts, all right, using your strips of papers. So okay. Okay, let's say here 1/4 plus 1/2, all right? You have your 2 strips here. Okay, what do? Find the lowest common denominator of 4 and 2, which is, what's the lowest common denominator? Is it? It's 2, Is it 2? Yeah, okay, let's say it's 2. So we have to make equivalent. You think it's 2? Okay, let's try the other way. I have a piece of paper. Okay, let's say 4. LCD of the common multiple of 2 and 4 is 8. Okay, 4 into 8 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2, 8. 2 into 8 is 4. Okay, so you have to divide your strip into how many parts? 8 parts. So you'll have to divide it into 8 parts. So how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 8s, 4 8s. All right, 8Es and receiving students, I think we'll stop here. All right, we'll stop here and we'll just correct number 1. Can we have someone to come up to the board, please, and write his or her working out for number 1? Receiving students, you can go up to the board and also write your working out and your answer for number 1. Okay, let's have. Okay, thank you. All right, 80s and receiving students. Who has another working out? Please, up to the board. Receiving students. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else to show his or her working out on the board? Receiving students. Right, you look at, okay, come. Look at, closely at their working out and check with yours. Check with your working out. Okay, remember we are using the instruction says you apply the LCD rule, lowest common denominator. So in here we are looking for the lowest common denominator, right? Okay, thank you. All right, let's have a look at the working outs. All right, here a quarter plus a half. Now, what is the LCD? We want to look for the lowest common denominator of 4 and 2. Now here we have 8. All right, is 8 the lowest common denominator of 4 and 2? No. Okay, so the answer here is correct, but we are not using we're not getting the lowest common denominator, okay? So let's look at the other working out, a quarter plus a half here. Now, because what is the lowest common denominator for 4 and 2? 4, okay? The lowest common denominator is 4. So we had to make equivalent a quarter. Is 4 over 4, is it equivalent to a quarter? Is 4/4 equivalent to a quarter? Yes or no? No. 4/4 is equivalent to what? 1 whole. So a quarter, should we change it? Or it stays the same? We leave it as it is. A quarter, should it be changed or we leave it as it is? Because we have to find the lowest common denominator, which is 4, and we already have 4 here. Do we have to change it again? No, we leave it as it is. We leave it as it is. It should be 1/4, and we only change a half, okay, because we're getting the lowest common denominator, which is 4. A half is changed to 2/4, 2 quarters. 80s, receiving students? So a quarter plus 2 quarters, because now we made the common, we found the lowest common denominator, which is 4. So a quarter, leave it as it is. A half becomes 2 quarter, because you multiply by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So what's our answer? What's our answer, receiving students? 1 plus 2 is 3/4. Hands up if you got this correct. Hands up if you got this working out. Hands up. All right. Okay. Okay, receiving students and 80s. For this question, maybe we can do that for our homework if you haven't done that. Okay, receiving students and 80s, you can do this for your homework. And in our next lesson, we come back and we'll correct this exercise. In today's lesson, we added and subtracted fractions using the lowest common denominator LCD rule, and also using strips of papers or diagrams to demonstrate how to add and subtract fractions. Anyway, we'll stop here. Right. Our key phrase for today's lesson is addition and subtraction of fractions. Thank you, 80s and receiving students, for participating.